In this video, I'm going to run through a few new things I'm going to be doing this year. When you start gardening, obviously you learn by experience, you get new research, and so you generally change your techniques or products over a period of time. But every year, there's usually a few things that really stick in your mind. And this year, I'm going to run through 6 that have worked for me, or I hope will work for me. The first one is coffee. See, I've got my little machine, my cafetiere here, and then I've got my AeroPress. I have 3 cups of coffee a day, which I absolutely love, and all research seems to say that's wonderful. But then I get all these coffee grounds. Now, coffee grounds are highly organic, they're actually quite nutritious for the soil, there's nitrogen, things like that in them. And they're also quite acidic, they're something like pH 6.5. And because I am pH 8, which is really pretty alkaline, if I grow things like, if I want blue hydrangeas or if I want witch hazels, then it's much better if the soil is more acidic. So if you just put neat coffee grounds on the soil as a mulch, it is not particularly good. It seems to me, because of their fine structure, they actually cause the plants to look more unhealthy rather than looking better. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try, and these are some coffee grounds with 3 cups of coffee for me, and the rest of the family have them as well. Then I have a fair amount, and so I put them from the cafetiere into this jar, and I'm just going to tip them into this bucket where I've got some bark mulch, and I'm going to slowly, because I don't want the whole structure of the coffee grounds to sort of impede movement of things in and out of the soil, I'm going to mix them up with the bark mulch. And hopefully that will then give me the benefits of the coffee grounds, i.e. a bit more acidity, a bit of nutrition, but it won't actually impede things getting through. So there's the ones from that. From the cafetiere, you can obviously just swoosh it out. I've put a bit of water in, swoosh it around and tip them in. But the great thing about the AeroPress, which is what a lot of people are getting into nowadays, so I haven't actually made this coffee, so I'm going to tip it up, put it over the top. For those of you who don't know AeroPress, it's a really quick device, and then you push it down and then the coffee comes out. But the reason gardeners quite like AeroPresses and people who wash up is they're so easy to clean. So having done that, there's my lovely coffee. You unscrew the base and then you just push it out like that. And then you just push the end and it all comes out in one neat thing. So it's very easy, you don't have to wash it up, you can just reuse it or whatever. So then I'm just going to stir them up, and I'm going to keep mixing. So every week, whenever my jar is full or whatever, I'll mix it up. And I think I'm going to go for something like a 50-50 mix of bark and coffee grains. So when my bucket is sort of 2/3 full or whatever, when it gets beyond easy to mix, then I'll just chuck it around the base of my hydrangeas that I want to be blue and my witch hazels and see what happens, and then I'll let you know. Now, this isn't proven. I haven't done any scientific research. This is just speculative. But I don't like wasting my coffee grounds. I drink a lot of coffee. I love my coffee. And I want to use them in the garden. If it doesn't work, if I put it on my hydrangeas and witch hazels and they all look sick as dogs, then I'll just put it on the compost heap. And that is surefire will work. Last year, I had box moth for the first time. And it's going mad in the UK. It's moving up. London is mad for it. Cambridge has got lots of it. And up in where we are, in Cambridgeshire, it's really gone too. So what I've always thought in the past is that these moth traps, which actually trap in the moth, and the way they work is that you unscrew this bit at the top, and you put the pheromone in there. There's a little pheromone in this. I'm not going to open it because I won't be using it until early May. You put that in there, put it in, and then you put the top on like that, and then you hang them around the garden. Now, in the past, these pheromone traps have really been advocated just to indicate when the box moth is flying. So you know when they're there, so then you get out with your spray to kill the box moth. But more gardeners are finding that if you actually use them in greater numbers, then you can actually use them as a control as well. And they think one of these will do about 20 metres of box hedge, or I think it's something like 180 square metres. So I'm going to use these in much more quantity. In fact, I just used 1 or 2 last year, but I'm going to use a lot more this year. And I'll put them out at the beginning of May, because the box moth could start flying anytime really from the beginning to the end of May. And there are warnings on the internet to tell you when they're there. And I'm just going to see. Now, I imagine if you've got masses of population of box moth, that even if you put a lot of these traps, and obviously the pheromone works by attracting the male moths into here, because it smells like a female moth, and they all come in here and they get stuck in the bottom and they can't get out. And I think that if you have huge populations, they wouldn't work. So last year, when I had them, I actually sprayed with dipel, and that's a bacteria, and it's called Bacillus thuringiensis. And what you do is, as soon as you see any of the skeletal leaves of box, if you actually spray it, and then it stops it. And you might need to do that twice or even possibly 3 times a year. But I think if I use lots more of these, and I put them out at the recommended rates and maybe increase the rates if it's not working, I think that should give me a pretty good control. I'm not replanting box now, so whenever I've got gardens and I'm putting box hedging and things like that, I substitute the box for Taxus baccata, and it can be kept at quite a low hedge, and it does work really well as a low hedge. It seems to suffer from very few diseases, unlike box, which has obviously the moth and the box blight. So I think that is the way to go for me. Maybe if people can't grow perhaps they've got very wet soils and even planting the Taxus on a mound won't help, then maybe they think of another alternative, such as one of the euonymuses. Anyway, let's be on the watch for box tree moth next year. Get out good and early. As always, in any garden pest, you've just got to keep on the ball, and as soon as you spot it, you need to sort it. We get more and more questions on Gardeners' Question Times from gardeners who find deer invading their gardens. And although they're beautiful animals, they do create havoc with trees. They'll nibble the bark and ruin the shape and kill them often. So what we normally do on commercial sites with deer is, if you've got a massive expanse of trees, you'll fence the entire area out. And that might be 1.8, 2 metres high if you've got red deer. But in this country we have red, fallow, roe and muntjac, which are the little dog-like things. And if you've got smaller amount of trees, you might find it more economical to stake them individually with something like a plastic stake, a Corex tree guard with a stake, and then you can keep the deer off those, and they'll be 1.5 to 2 metres high. And you'll have to leave it on for about 5 to 10 years, and that will make the tree very drawn as it goes up out of the guard. Now, I've just discovered a new product which is called Trico, and Trico is made from sheep's fat, and apparently if you apply it once, twice, 3 times a year, depending on the amount of rain, it actually deters deer from attacking the tree. So if you've got large amounts of trees, again in your garden, maybe you've got 30 or something, you'll probably apply it with a knapsack sprayer. If you've just got small amounts, 1 or 2, then you could do it with something like this Florist Mister bottle. And so I'm using that on sites now where we've got sort of medium amount of trees. It's not worth staking them individually, but it's worth keeping them off with a deterrent like this. And I think it sounds an excellent product from what I've heard, and I just hope it really works. Persimmon trees are one of my favourite trees, and I have seen one growing in Stamford, and it was literally covered with these sort of golden reddish balls all through the Christmas period with no leaves. Now this tree I planted a few years ago, and it has got 1 persimmon on it. That was its first fruit, and this one is Fuyu. So this is a hybrid called Diosporus Fuyu, Now, recently I understand that you can now buy new hardier hybrids. So persimmon is thought to be quite a tender tree, but obviously the one in Stamford somehow managed to establish, and this hasn't shown any signs of frost damage so far, and it must have been in here 4 or 5 years. But they've been breeding as ever. And there are 2 varieties that Frank Matthews, who are one of the biggest suppliers of wholesale trees and fruit bushes, and now they're having a direct line so ordinary people of the public can buy them. And they have got 2 new varieties which they're going to send me next year. And they are Nikita's Gift is one, and I'm reminded of Nikita Airport where I got stuck when my flight got landed in a different place, and Rosie Yanka. So Frank Matthews are sending me those 2, and I'm hoping that they're going to give me lots of lovely persimmon trees. But we have used them on jobs in colder places than this, and they do grow to magnificent specimens. And I think with the climate change, and it is definitely getting warmer at the moment, over the last few years it has been warmer and warmer on record, I think there's a chance that we could, more and more of us could be enjoying these wonderful persimmon trees. We've been putting a lot more verandas in gardens recently because people love a covered space that they can use, whether it's raining or sunshine. Sometimes it's too hot, sometimes it's too wet, and sometimes it's too windy. But having that covered outdoor space is just fantastic. The other thing I like about verandas is you can actually take a very bleak elevation, put a beautiful veranda on it, and it really lifts the whole building. So that is a perfect excuse to just sort of beautify the building. And some of the less expensive versions we've made are with timber posts, nice chunky timber posts, maybe 200 by 200, and then just putting Corex perspex along the top at a slight angle, and then hiding it with heather matting or something like that over the top and possibly under the bottom as well. And we've done those at Time Hotel, we've done them in lots of places, and it sounds a very Heath Robinson makeshift way to do it, but actually they do last pretty well and they are excellent. We've got a building here at the back which is full of different types of architecture. It's stepping in and out, nothing very uniform, doesn't look great. And my idea is to put a veranda on the back of that. And that will again unify those 3 different types of architecture, and it will just make an extra outdoor space that's very, very usable. So my plan this year, and already we've designed some for 2 buildings this year already, and I just think they're the way to go. And so if you've got the opportunity, why not create a simple but stunning veranda? You might have seen the rose meadow on my videos before, but the reason I like this is because I'm using roses more and more in meadows. I love roses, as you probably gather, because they're so versatile. We've got standard roses, you can use them in formal gardens, in informal, however you like really. And in a rose meadow, I think they are wonderful. Now, at the moment, you can't see any roses, so you probably wonder what on earth I'm talking about. But I'm using here lots of informal shrub roses. We've got lots of Rosa mutabilis. They are small because I took them from cuttings. But apart from the topiary here, most of the plants are just bits I've grown from seed or I've dug up from elsewhere and propagated on. So for the understory of the meadow, we've got the non-mowable grasses, we've got the ludula, some of the golden forms to add pops of colour. We've got some herbaceous, we've got the lovely perennial foxgloves, digitalis lutea, which come back with the pale yellow flowers. We've got some hellebores. We've got a range of geranium, herbaceous geraniums. So it's all very informal, unplanned planting really. I just pop things in where I've got gaps. But it's unified in the growing season with these lovely shrub roses plus the topiary. And I think when you're using this sort of informal planting, in the winter it can look just like an amorphous mass. But if you add the topiary, it just gives it more structure. I'm enjoying this type of gardening because you can change it as much as you like. You can add in things, you can try different things. And I find it very forgiving compared to borders, whereas if you've got some stunners and perhaps they don't work out. Here you've got so many different plants that it really doesn't matter if you have a bit of failure. And the other thing is you've got diversity. So you're pulling in many more insects and things like that. You can see bulbs are popping up already. So the season will really kick off in spring, where we'll have crocuses, then we'll have tulips, we'll have camasias, we'll have the fritillarias, we'll have the lovely big Eremurus, and we'll go on through, and then the herbaceous kicks in, and the roses will obviously start to flower around May. So this is a lovely way to use roses to really give a lovely burst of colour. So those are just a few ideas of things I'll be trialling this year. And if you've got any great ideas of things that you've discovered, please let me know. Just message me back on YouTube, because I think we learn so much from other gardeners, and it's been really helpful with a lot of your great, very helpful comments. Have a great gardening new year.